It was the summer of 216 BC, and the Second Punic War, which had already spanned nearly a decade, was at a crucial turning point. On one side stood the Roman Republic, a vast and powerful entity, a seemingly unstoppable force with its seemingly endless supply of soldiers and resources. Their enemy, Hannibal Barca, the Carthaginian general, a master tactician and strategist whose cunning and genius had already shaken Rome to its core at the battles of the Trebia River in 218 BC, and his successful ambush at Lake Trasimene a year later. Both were heavy blows to Roman pride, but they had not yet broken the Roman spirit. Determined to end Hannibal's threat once and for all, the Roman Senate mustered the largest Roman army that had ever been assembled in the ancient world. Led by two Roman consuls, Gaius Terentius Varro and Lucius Aemilius Paullus, to confront the Carthaginian general and put a stop to this conflict once and for all. Roman manpower was significantly hindered due to the heavy losses they suffered against Hannibal at the two previous encounters. In order for them to assemble such a force at Cannae, the Romans acquired soldiers from their neighboring factions, the Etruscans, the Samnites, and other Italic mercenaries to help fill their ranks. All in all, their entire force numbered some 85,000 in strength. 70,000 infantry made up the center, with the flanks having roughly 3,000 cavalry respectively. The remainder of their force was left in reserve to guard their camps. Hannibal had moved his forces south through Italy, using the difficult terrain and his knowledge of the land to evade and outmaneuver the Roman legions. His army, though smaller, roughly 50,000 in size, was composed of well-trained, experienced soldiers whom accompanied him during his Italian campaign. 40,000 infantry made up the bulk of his force, Gallic mercenaries at the center, with Libyan and Iberian troops stationed on the outer flanks and Balearic slingers at the forefront. On his flanks, 10,000 cavalry split into two divisions, 5,000 on each flank. These were his renowned elite Numidian cavalry, with Iberian and Gallic cavalry in support. Realizing his numerical disadvantage, Hannibal opted to spread his formation as wide as that of the Romans. The formation resembled something of a bow. His Gallic infantry at the center were spread thinly. The Iberian and Libyan infantry on the flanks, however, were formed up into much deeper ranks of dense columns, which in turn concealed their sheer mass from the sight of the Roman force. The two consuls, Varro and Paullus, ultimately agreed to give battle and engage Hannibal head-on at Cannae. The location was flat and open, ideal for the Roman legions to deploy their famous heavy infantry in their traditional style of warfare. The Romans, confident in their numerical superiority, assumed that their sheer weight of numbers would overwhelm Hannibal, whose army was smaller in size. The consuls opted for an aggressive head-on strategy. They formed their soldiers up into deep ranks of infantry that would in theory smash straight into Hannibal's center, overwhelming it with sheer weight and force once engaged. The consuls were not too concerned with their flanks, as they had the Aufidus River protecting their right flank, and believed that they had an ample cavalry force to hold the numerical superior Carthaginian cavalry in place, whilst their superior infantry would swiftly carve through Hannibal's lines. An ignorant belief that would cost them dearly. The battle unfolded with skirmishers on both sides engaging at the center of the battlefield, violently loosing projectiles into one another's ranks. Whilst the skirmish battle was underway, Hannibal saw an opportunity. Realizing his cavalry force outnumbered the Romans almost 2-1, he swiftly ordered his cavalry on his left flank forward to engage the Roman right flank. Hannibal's cavalry swiftly overwhelmed the Roman right with their numbers, experience, and superiority. The Numidian and Iberian cavalry then gave pursuit, chasing the Roman cavalry off the field of battle. The skirmishers at the center withdrew, and the Roman infantry sized up for battle. 70,000 soldiers marched across the battlefield like a colossal wrecking ball. Their marching footsteps could be heard from miles away. Hannibal's Gallic infantry at the center braced themselves for what was about to come. The sheer sight of the oncoming Romans with such a force sent shivers down the bravest of warriors' spines. Hannibal opted to command the center himself alongside his youngest brother Mago, to inspire morale and ensure his lines do not break prematurely. Hannibal's cavalry on the right flank surged forward, looking to break the remainder of the Roman cavalry. The renowned Numidian cavalry led the charge, skirmishing and forcing the Romans into a melee fight. The inexperienced Roman cavalry were drawn into battle and were quickly set upon by Gallic and Iberian cavalry. Numidian skirmishers surrounded their position and began picking them off. With the Roman cavalry completely outwitted, their morale broke, and most of their riders soon fled. Hannibal's cavalry gave pursuit, chasing the Roman cavalry and their commander and consul Varro off the battlefield. The Roman center was now fully exposed and vulnerable. The Romans pressed forward, eager to exploit what appeared to be a weakness. Hannibal's center gave ground, slowly pulling back and luring the Romans into committing more men toward the center. On the left and right flank of the infantry engagements, the Romans were deadlocked with Hannibal's more elite infantry, the Libyans and Iberians. They each held their ground, whilst the Gallic center continued to slowly retreat, drawing the Romans further inward. Now was the time. Hannibal gave the signal. The Roman center had surged too far forward, completely falling into Hannibal's trap. The Carthaginian infantry, including elite soldiers and experienced veterans, closed in from all directions. The Romans, accustomed to fighting in long linear formations, now found themselves disorganized and unable to respond to the chaos that was unfolding. And to make matters worse, Hannibal's cavalry had returned to the battlefield, led by his brother Hasdrubal and the Numidian cavalry commander Maharbal. They swiftly closed in around the Roman lines. With the Romans now trapped in a pincer movement, the battle became a nightmare. The Romans, unable to retreat or maneuver, were surrounded on all sides. For hours, the battle raged. The Romans fought desperately, but their lack of leadership, cohesion, and morale was to prove to be too much of an obstacle to overcome. The Carthaginian forces, lighter and more maneuverable, cut down the Romans in waves. The slaughter was relentless. In the end, many historians debate the actual death toll at Cannae. What we know for sure was that a number ranging from 50,000 to 75,000 Roman soldiers were killed, whilst many thousands were captured and/or escaped. The Carthaginians, on the other hand, had suffered fewer than 8,000 casualties. The Battle of Cannae was one of the worst defeats in Roman history. It shattered the Roman army and sent shockwaves throughout the Republic. For Hannibal, it was a triumph of tactics, strategy, and psychological warfare. By using the terrain to his advantage, luring the Romans into a trap, and executing a brilliant double envelopment, he had dealt a devastating blow to the might of Rome. Yet despite this victory, Hannibal faced significant challenges in exploiting his success. Rome, though battered, did not collapse.